Hey!
Episode 2. This show, a lot has happened in the last week. The biggest thing that happened is the show actually has a name now. It's called The Island Shuffle.
The Island Shuffle.
I'm Bean Levier, and this is...
I'm James Brown.
And together we're here to watch Lost in the wrong order for some reason. I'm sure we explained it better last episode. Let's, first off, how's your week been?
My week has been pretty good. I went to work,
Yeah.
went to the park. It
Very
heated
good.
up. It's summertime in Montreal now.
It's summertime in the city. It is currently like 1,000,000 degrees, and we just sweated our way through a really bizarre episode of Lost.
It felt hot just like on the island.
Just like on the island. Just that island living heat, you know? Listen. If there's anything anybody wants to hear, it's talk about how the weather is. So I only want to mention it just so that if we sound groggy, it's only a little bit because of the episode we just watched, and mostly because of the currently suffocating temperatures.
From my part, having not knowing what I was walking into with the episode this week, it is mostly from the episode we just watched. I was shocked.
That is fair. What do you say we dive right in and say, hey, lads and lasses, last week we watched the Season 2 episode.
13.
Season 2 episode 13.
The Long Con.
Sawyer stole the guns. And that was the whole episode.
That was a great episode.
Good, nice little episode,
I
you know?
thought that's what this show was.
Listen, this show is a lot of things. This show goes some wild places. And this week, we rolled a high number. We rolled Season 6, Episode 9, titled AB AETERNO, which I think is Latin for forever or something like that, like eternity.
It's a metaphor for how it feels when you're watching this episode.
Ooh, zingy. Zingy. Once an episode we're obliged to do, the reason they call it Lost is because I was lost while I was watching it. So, I forget if we brought this up last time, but it's worth emphasizing that our dear friend James here has not seen the most of the latter half of the series that we call Lost.
I thought that I had a decent understanding of what the show was, and this episode completely iterated that I have no clue. It looked nothing like any episode of Lost that I had seen before.
So, here's the thing about Season 6. Most people are going to agree with me on this. That it is probably the worst season of the show. By a wide margin.
I'd go so far as to say this was the worst episode of this show that I've ever seen.
Oh, dog. Dog. We have not even started. You have not seen a bad episode of Lost yet, my friend. Don't you worry. We got a lot of trash to
wait
coach
to
through.
get here, yeah.
So, AB AETERNO is, funnily enough, considered one of the high points of the season. I don't think it's that bad of an episode, but I do think it is definitely, I think it's more like we were so thirsty for anything, that was even kind of okay at the time of this airing that we were just like, we'll take this, and this was fine for now. This will do. Anyways, we should probably talk about what the heck happens in this episode.
What the heck did happen in this episode?
Well, we open up with the gang around the campfire.
And who was left in the gang at this point? We have Jack.
At this point, we have Jack. We have Kate is there, I believe. Sun is there.
And Hurley
is there. Frank is there.
Is Frank the pilot?
Frank is the pilot.
Frank is the pilot.
And you know he's the pilot because he is always dressed like a pilot.
Even though he's been trapped on an island for a very long time, presumably.
I think he just doesn't have any other clothes, or maybe he just wants everybody to. He's just really proud.
He's still a pilot. He's like, if they ever find another plane in the jungle, which they did in the first season, he's like, I can fly it out of here.
That is literally his purpose. That is, you absolutely
Is
have
that
to
actually what happens?
That's the exact thing that happens to Frank.
Oh my god, that's why he wears his pilot uniform.
Yeah, so you don't forget. You look at that guy and you're like, who the fuck? Oh, he's so that they can fly a plane.
Oh my god.
There's a lot of...
I thought I was making a joke, but actually I was just writing an Emmy Award-winning show.
You were writing one of the most acclaimed dramas and influential talked about dramas of the aughts. So they're all talking about God, what's her name? Ilana? Someone is telling them, like, he's basically filling them in, like, hey, Jacob brought y'all here. And you're, of course, like, who the fuck is Jacob? Mm-hmm. And Jacob's like, hey, you're all candidates. Candidates for what? Fucking blah, blah, blah. Basically what it boils down to is, what's the next step? Let's ask our new hero, the new protagonist of the show. Ricky. Ricardo's. Ilana asks Ricardo's, well, what the heck do you think we should do about all this?
His response was incredible.
His response is a one for the books, for sure. His response is, I don't know. You haven't realized? You're dead and we're in hell this whole time.
Right after saying, though, why would you think that I was of answers? When you found me, I was trying to kill myself.
Yep.
And then says we're in hell, which are two completely contradictory statements.
Yeah, that's something that didn't even occur to me. Yeah.
And that sort of recurs in the episode, just the idea that he wants to die, but he also believes he's in hell.
He wants to die, but he's suffering. This is a real... this episode's alternate title could definitely be The Passion of the Ricky. It's all just...
that is exactly what it was. That would have been a better title.
For sure. But AB AETERNO is so mysterious. So, Ricky runs off into the jungle. And everybody's like, where is he going? He's lost his mind, you know. Also, I've known him forever. He doesn't age. What's the deal with him? How could that happen? And whoosh. Just like that, we're off to the races. So you know how most episodes kind of intersperse, you know, it's like stuff's happening on the island, and then you get a little taste of someone's backstory. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they'll break from that formula with less than thrilling results. In this episode, they decide, let's go all in on telling you what Richard Alpert's backstory is. Richard Alpert is a character we've seen around for most of the series. Like, he's kind of there, and he seems like he knows some stuff, but we don't really, like, we never really, like, see what his deal is ever. And so this is kind of, I really, like, I'm trying to justify why, this episode happened, basically.
From an outsider's perspective, I think it didn't need to happen, but that was... I don't know. I guess it explained what the island was in a way. And that's sort of what they were trying to do.
Yes, that definitely
But in a very convoluted, absolutely absurd way.
It's... Okay.
Richard starts running into the jungle, and then naturally, as you do, you just jump back 150 years.
Yes, you jump back 150 years to the Canary Islands, where his wife is dying. And he's like, oh no, my wife is dying. Also, I'm talking in Spanish. And he's like, I'm gonna go to town, get your medicine. Goes to town, meets a dickhead doctor. He's a colonialist doctor. He's all
really bad doctor.
He's like gobbling up a feast or whatever. And he's like, you're a peasant. You're dripping on my floors. I could give you medicine, but it's expensive, and you don't have shit to me. You've given me your wife's cross. This is worthless. Get out. In the ensuing tussle, Richard accidentally murders him. They're like tussling, Buddy's head gets knocked on the table. He's like, oh shit, well, I have his medicine, so I better run back to my wife. Runs back to his wife. Wife is already dead. Police come and arrest him. In jail, Richard is reading the Bible. Preacher comes in and says, hey, Bible time, confess to me. And he's like, please absolve me of my sins. And the priest says, no. Thank you.
The priest says, no, you murdered someone. I could never forgive you for that. God doesn't forgive you.
God just doesn't forgive you for that.
And rather than forgiving you, the priest sells him into slavery.
Yeah, good job, priest. You're doing a real bang-up job.
For like a sack of money the size of the one that Richard was trying to give the doctor.
It literally could have been like beans or scraps. And the priest was just
it didn't seem like very much money.
No, it wasn't much. Anyways, next scene is Richard in chains on a ship called the Black Rock that the viewers would have seen before. We've seen this ship on the island a handful of times.
I recognize that.
So this is kind of like a
ship.
So now I realize what the episode is. It's like let's give the fans what they want. The fans have been watching the adventures unfold on this mysterious island for so long. What if we gave them a glimpse into the way back in the past and answered a few questions like where'd this ship come from? The answer is it came from a guy.
Yeah, it was. That guy was around for 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
The answer is Richard was on that ship, and everything else about the ship is completely inconsequential.
Exactly. Yeah. The like they, this show does a lot of like, they'll plant a seed, and then be like, well, hopefully this can be a cool thing later, and I think that's exactly what the ship was, and it doesn't really like it's not like. Like, I vividly remember at the time, like, seeing the ship and being like, whoa, it's the ship! And in retrospect, it is, like...
It's nothing. It's
nothing.
Less than nothing.
It's less than nothing.
It's so meaningless within the actual plot of the thing.
Exactly.
Which is good. Which is sort of... I feel like that's sort of a little treat in and of itself with this show.
Absolutely.
It's enjoyable to have this realization that, like... Oh, I'm sure at one point the writers thought that they would make something of this, and then just it got too convoluted and too complicated, and they just wrote it off as another thing they built up without any real...
Exactly. And season 6, the reason it suffers so much is because they really do not stick the landing, and all that like weight of all the mysteries that have been building up over the past 5 seasons, like it finally comes to a head, and the show is writing checks that its body can't cash.
Incredible. I guess looking at it with that attitude, I think I can enjoy season 6 a bit more now that I know exactly what it is, because I was expecting to watch the show Lost, and this was nothing like the show Lost that I had seen before. It didn't have any of the characters that I liked.
None of them.
It didn't have like any of the structure that I enjoyed. It didn't have any of the plot points that had previously seemed so important, because everything has changed. Now it's all about hell.
Yes, it's all about hell and heaven and God and the devil.
Whereas before it was just about like, hey, let's get off the island.
Yeah, let's just get off. How are we going to get off this island? And well, in a way, is hell going to get off the island? Anyways, we're getting ahead of ourselves. The ship crashes onto the island. And our old friend, the Smoke Monster, kills pretty much everyone except Richard. We never mentioned the Smoke Monster last time. One of the longest running mystery threads of the show is that there's just a monster on the island. And the more you learn about it, the more... Like, every time you see it, you see kind of a little bit more of it. You eventually learn that it's basically just, like... I think you learn pretty early on that it's just sentient smoke, effectively.
But, like, very strong smoke that can pick people up.
It can pick people up. It can uproot trees. It can, like, tear off limbs. It can, like, completely, like, fuck all the shit up. And, gosh. By season 6, we learn that... You know what? I'm getting ahead of myself again. I'm, like... The problem is that there's so much in this episode.
There's too much in this episode. It's incredible.
So much in this episode. Okay. So Richard is the only one surviving, and he's just kind of like... We get like a pretty long montage of him just like stuck in chains, alone, suffering. Like he's... Like there's a rainfall, but it's just out of his reach and he can't reach it. And he's like starving and he sees a boar, but he can't. And he spends like, however long it is, months, years maybe, chipping away at like his chains, trying to like loosen them, and he's like barely making any progress. He's beaten down. He's battered. He sees his dead wife, and his dead wife also says, "Guess what? We're in hell, baby." Because I died.
Was she the first person to say that?
I believe canonically, yes. Maybe the preacher said something about it too, but that was before he visited the island.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so his wife, who was she actually there? Is that? I guess we don't know.
We don't really know. So here's the thing. A fella in a black shirt comes up and says, "Hey, buddy, here's some water. Also, I found these keys, and I'll free you if you just do whatever I say." And Richard's like, did you see my wife? My wife is here. And he's like, I think I saw the devil take her. And Richard's just like, I am in hell, aren't I? And the man in black is like, yep, you're for sure in hell. So, all right. I don't think there's any point in progressing before we talk about the dynamic of the man in black and also Jacob. I think that's worth addressing.
So the man in the black just got introduced. Mm-hmm. He frees Richard, and he says, you got to do whatever I want. Mm-hmm. And then Richard says, who are you? Mm-hmm. And at first he says, I'm a friend. Mm-hmm. And then after a little more coaxing, mm-hmm. he reveals, I am the smoke monster. Mm-hmm. I am the smoke that goes around this island, like killing people. Even though right now he looks like a very normal man, just wearing smoky clothes.
That's exactly right. So at this point in the story, we know as much of the nature of the smoke monster as we're going to know, which is that yes, he has a person form, and yes, also he can assume the forms of the dead.
Oh, he can assume the forms of... Oh, because he was Isabella in that moment.
Yes, exactly.
That makes sense. Well, does it? I guess.
And it is worth noting that there are also actually ghosts on the island.
Oh, okay.
So,
good to know. Yeah.
So a constant question that never really goes resolved is like, is that the smoke monster fucking with me, or is that an actual ghost that I'm seeing? Then that's like... sucks.
You've got to go to Hurley with that question.
You got to go to Hurley with that question. By the way, Hurley... talks to ghosts now. I completely forget how that is even introduced. I'm sure it's super clumsy. And it's just like, I really don't know.
I think maybe because the ghost he needed to talk to in this circumstance was Spanish and he speaks Spanish, so they're like, I guess Hurley can talk to her.
That makes sense. And also, like, I think way too hard about, like, why did this happen? Why did that happen? The answer 99% of the time is because the plot needed it to happen. Why can Hurley talk to this ghost? Because the plot needed it to happen. Why could Smoke Monster do this? Because the plot needed it to happen.
In this sense, the plot is just like the island.
Exactly.
It's this, like, mythical force that's always driving forward and no one can quite figure out what it actually is.
Exactly.
And then you eventually get to, like, the bottom of it, and it's
just
a little
hell.
disappointing.
It's
just hell. The plot
hell.
is just hell.
It's just
and
hell.
And hell is continually bringing the show Lost forward.
Pretty much. So the smoke monster manifesting as guy in black shirt. And by the way, I just want to clarify, he does not have a canonical name. So,
which is good.
So we call him Smokey or the Man in Black or whatever.
And Westworld sort of did the whole the Man in Black thing a lot better, so I think we should just call him Smokey.
I'm into Smokey. So Human Smokey says, I freed you, we had a deal. The devil lives over there. Here's a knife. Go kill him.
Don't let him talk to you.
Don't let him talk to you.
He's pretty convincing.
He's pretty persuasive.
If he's begun to talk to you, it's already too late.
It's already too late, which is just a very classic bullshit thing. Richard goes up to the beach. And he gets some really nice shots of fucking haggard-ass Richard staggering down the beach. He walks up to the statue of a foot, which is another seed that got planted earlier.
I did know about the statue of the foot.
There's a statue of the foot, and we've since learned that it's Jacob's home. It's Jacob's fucking house.
Jacob lives in a statue of a foot.
He sure did.
Naturally.
Yeah. Where else would Jacob live?
There was an old lady that lived in a shoe, and there was the devil, and he lived in a statue of a foot.
Exactly. So Richard gets his ass kicked immediately by Jacob, almost immediately.
Mm-hmm. He's a bad fighter, a very bad fighter. I
mean, being trapped in that boat for so long would do that to you.
But he was fighting for everything in the world. He was fighting to see his wife again. He was trying to kill the devil. He was a very religious person, so that's like a very important part of martyrdom.
Of course. So Jacob's like, what are you doing, buddy? Richard's like, you're the devil, I gotta kill you. And we're in hell, right? And Jacob's like, no, dummy, we're not in hell. And he sits him down, and he says, that guy is evil. And see this bottle? He gives a very so he gives basically what is effectively the explanation for what the island is.
With a bottle of wine.
Basically, malevolence, hell, evil is the wine, and the island is the cork keeping the wine from getting out. Because if the evil got out, that would be bad. And Jacob's job is to keep the evil, aka the smoke monster guy, on the island.
Classic.
Mm-hmm. And listen, a lot of season 6 deals in this, like, the main arc of season 6 is this conflict between Jacob and the Man in Black, or Smokey, and they're trying to figure out who's going to take over Jacob's job, and how are they going will they be able to stop Smokey? Will Smokey be able to do what he's been planning supposedly this whole time? Will Smokey escape? Those are the stakes of season 6, effectively. And it's very, like, big and mythical, and it doesn't really ever, with a few exceptions, it doesn't really ever land in a way that feels, like, good or natural or satisfying. It just kind of feels like, it feels like there's some moments about this season that I do genuinely like a lot, and there's a few moments in here that I like. Like, I do like the, like, here's a bottle of wine. The island is keeping evil out. Okay, I will accept that as an explanation.
That was all right.
That's not bad. That's fine. But then Jacob says something pretty crazy, which is, the smoke monster believes that people are some guy slept through philosophy class and wrote this thing about, like, how the Man in Black thinks that all people are evil and it's in their nature to sin. And Jacob brings people to the island to prove him wrong. And
does it work?
And that's
no, it's failed for thousands of years.
It's in the most incredible scene of the episode by a wide margin. He's talking to him and he's like, and I've been bringing people here all this time, and this is why I've been bringing people here and why I continue to bring people here up until the present day of the show, is to prove some fucking bullshit philosophy thing. And Richard are
inherently good.
Richard asks him, like,
where are the people?
How did the other people do? And without missing a beat, Jacob looks sheepishly down at his glass of wine and goes, "They're all dead."
So basically just an admittance that the entire plot of the show is, like, this catastrophic failure that, like, Jacob refuses to accept. And, like, he should really just stop bringing people to the island because they're obviously not inherently what he wants them to be. Also, I really don't understand what, like, his idea that people are inherently good has to do with, he brought about 15 people to the island in this episode. 14 of them were immediately killed.
Immediately just straight up murdered.
So, like, how does that prove anything about the inherent goodness or badness of people if they just get murdered immediately?
It's really like, it's like his shitty evil brother is just, like, bullying, just breaking all his toys, basically. It's so, like, it really just, like,
it just doesn't hold up, Jacob. I know
It doesn't. And, like, Richard brings it up and he goes, shit, you're right.
Yeah, basically. But continues to do it. He's like, maybe in 110 years I'll crash a plane. And then he does that.
Exactly.
And we get this show.
Well, I think a big, like, one of the things is they're trying to find a successor for Jacob. And eventually the successor... Maybe the successor doesn't have to do things Jacob's way, you know? Maybe there's a new way.
What they should have done, or at least Jacob should have done in that instance, is, like, try and help the other 14 people who immediately got killed. If you're looking for a successor, don't just let, like, 95% of people who come to the island be murdered by the smoke monster immediately.
It's so bananas. Because he's like, well, if I interfere, then what's the point? And it's like... I don't know.
They're getting murdered.
You're bringing a lot of people to die.
Yeah.
A lot of people to die, and a lot of people will continue to die because explicitly they were brought here by you. Think of the people who didn't survive the plane crash, the initial plane crash that sets up this whole journey.
Yeah, you you massacred so many people in the process of bringing like this ragtag bunch of like Dr. Jack and Sawyer and bringing them all to the island. Mm-hmm. You also killed so many different people. There were so many vacationing families on that plane.
It's just like I'm glad you could find a new person to take your job, but there's got to be a better way.
Yeah, like an online application.
Yeah.
Hey, do you want to live forever?
Hey, want to live forever and guard evil? Yeah. It's a pretty it's eternity, so it's not the best, but just don't get into a philosophy argument with this guy. Anyways, that's the broader themes of season 6 and why I don't think it's that good and why a lot of people don't think it's that good. Because when Lost tries to really just wrestle with these big picture questions, it just doesn't quite get there.
Yeah, they don't tie up the loose ends at all. It's very self-contradicting arguments, and it is incredible to watch.
It is incredible to watch, and I want to stress that it's not just they're not answering my questions. It's that the answers they're giving are not good.
It's like a D paper.
Yeah, it's really
just okay. I see that you're writing things here, but you have nothing to support your conclusions. I'm giving you a D.
Yes.
A+ intro. That was a great first season.
you had a great first season.
You set something up great, and then you were
you kind of just kept spinning those wheels, and sometimes you really had me going for a second.
For a second there, you got me.
Can I tell you that I really, really, without getting too deep into it, have a big soft spot in my heart for season 5.
Okay.
I really kind of admire it a lot. And that makes season 6 all the more disappointing.
Okay.
So it's not.
God.
So I don't think it's a slow descent. I think it's a roller coaster. I think that's what the show is. Anyways,
they were time to wrap it up. The network's closing its claws and just did a bad job.
They just didn't do a good job.
So what?
So ultimately, what happens is Jacob says, "You're right, Richard. I probably shouldn't be murdering all these people." And I can't really step in for undisclosed reasons.
Because he doesn't
want to. But maybe you could step in for me. I don't really know how that is okay, but fine. And Richard's like, I guess, sure, that sounds good. But I need something in return. And Jacob says, I can give you anything. Richard says, give me my wife back. Jacob says, ooh, can't do that quite. And then he says, well, can you absolve me of my sins? And Jacob says, can't do that either, I'm afraid, buddy. And then he says, well, if I have sins and I die, I'll go to hell. So I want to live forever so I don't go to hell. And Jacob can do that.
Why?
And
good question.
Why? Very good question. Another thing is that, Jacob's powers are very just, indeterminate and basically whatever the plot demands. Jacob is basically just, it's very just nebulous, whatever, who cares, why did that happen? Jacob said so.
It was very incredible that he has a grasp on mortality. He can alter things within mortality. He has something to do with who goes into hell and who stays in the escaping of hell and into the world. But he can't bring someone back, and he cannot absolve someone of their sins. He can't do what a priest does.
Yeah, he can't do what a priest does.
He should bring a priest there to absolve them of his sins.
Yeah,
he can bring a priest, kill everyone else on the boat that the priest was on.
Yeah, exactly. And then the priest can go around absolving everybody, absolving Jacob of his sins. If you ask me. So ultimately, Richard goes back to the Man in Black and says, couldn't do it. Man in Black says, yeah, well, them's the breaks. If you ever change your mind, you know where to find me. And flash forward to the present day. Richard is back. He's straggled. He's all messed up. He's standing there saying, I'm ready to... Does the offer still stand? I don't believe in Jacob anymore.
Changed my dang old mind.
Jacob told me everything that we did on this island was for a purpose, and now he's fucking dead, so I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't think we ever covered this, by the way.
No, I didn't realize that Jacob was dead.
Yes, in present day times, Jacob is dead.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't really like him anyways.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
thought he was very dumb.
Yeah, he's a dumb, smug dummy.
I think things would have been best off if Jacob died a long time before that.
For sure.
Fuck, what was the Dharma Initiative? We can't get into it.
There will be loads of time to get into the Dharma Initiative. So, ultimately, Hurley shows up. He sees Richard screaming and he says, "Hey, guess what? I can see dead people. And I see your dead wife right there. Your dead wife says you're doing a bang-up job and your dead wife loves you very much." And we get, actually kind of pretty touching scene of Richard being all sad. His dead wife's cradling him, but Richard can't see him, but Hurley can. And so they're having a conversation and saying, "I love you very much. You've suffered a bunch. Hey, Ricky, this one's on the house."
Yeah, exactly. This bud's for you.
This bud's for you, Ricky. And Richard, having had this conversation with his dead wife, his faith is resolved. He realizes, can't go to the Man in Black. Oh yeah, he's evil incarnate. I can't trust that guy. Mm-hmm. And finally, Hurley says to the camera, kind of the camera, he says, "One more thing your wife said. If you don't stop the Man in Black from escaping, we're all going to hell."
So Richard in that moment becomes the new Jacob.
No.
Okay.
No.
Logic would state that
Richard would become... Well, there's
with Jacob dead, and I guess Richard in that moment needs to, like, kill the Man in Black or something.
I think
Smokey.
So. Yeah, there's a whole... It's a whole rigmarole.
Okay, so it's just to set up the next great adventure.
Exactly. It's to set up Richard's redemption arc, which I don't think ever is a thing. I'm
It's quickly forgotten.
I'm sure he helps out. He helps out in some way or another. Anyways, we also get one final scene of in the past, Jacob and the human form of Smokey having a chat, and he's like, "Why'd you kill me?" And he was like, "Because I want to leave."
Why'd you try to kill me?
Yeah. Why'd you try to kill me? I want to leave.
Because Jacob was not yet dead at this point.
And
I didn't grasp. I didn't understand that Jacob was dead this whole time. I'm just grabbing my hands.
I should clarify that in the past, Jacob is very much alive.
Okay. Yeah.
In the present,
and in this episode, we saw him be alive an awful lot without I guess there were concrete indicators with the 1867 to present day thing that was a change in time.
Yes.
But the last scene.
Yes.
Did not have a really concrete indicator of the change in time. Except for the fact that Jacob is back.
Yeah, exactly. And also it's worth noting that the audience knows that Jacob is dead at this point. This is just a thing that's assumed.
This is just something that happens when you watch Lost Out of Order.
Yeah, you just sometimes don't quite have all the facts there. So Smokey smashes the wine. And end of episode.
Metaphor for letting all hell...
all hell break loose. Yeah. So that is the episode Ab Aeterno. Do you have any, final questions to get through? Do you have, is there anything I can help you clarify at all about this episode? Or the state of Lost at this point?
So, I think most of my questions, or at least the ones that I think are worth trying to wrap my head around, have been asked.
Sure.
New things that I learned, which I would sort of like to try and recap in my head. So
absolutely.
I had never met Richard before.
Right.
Met him. He lives forever, obviously.
He sure does.
And now has to kill the smoke monster. Had never met the human incarnation of the smoke monster before. Turns out it's just a dude. I'd never met Jacob before. Turns out he's responsible for making sure that hell stays within the island.
Yes. Big episode.
Learned that the island is the cork that keeps the wine that is hell in the underworld.
Yes.
Frank the pilot wears pilot clothes to reiterate constantly that he is indeed a pilot. That's in case true. Anyone forgets.
In case anyone ever forgets.
And then my favorite one by far is just Hurley talks to dead people now.
Hurley talks to dead people now.
Hurley talks to dead people.
How could that be? I legitimately, I knew that this was a thing. And I completely forget how it's introduced. I can't
believe it.
I know that there's a thing in his backstory that he would, like, he spent some time in a like, psychiatric ward, and he did have mental health issues. So I don't know, like, has he always been able to talk to dead people, or is this a thing that they pulled out of their ass? Probably a little both.
I feel like... Was there an episode earlier where, like, he shared a cab with the kid from The Sixth Sense and got, like, some of his spit?
You know, I do remember that scene.
That would be a good explanation.
I think that, I think if you look hard enough in the background of one of the scenes... You can see that. You can see exactly that.
That's exactly what happens. And they're like, you just gotta look for it. It's all there. And there was actually one more thing that we forgot to mention.
What's that?
John Locke.
Yeah.
Is at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And what was the implication with his appearance? That he is the new smoke monster?
He is indeed the new smoke monster.
So the smoke man is dead, apparently.
No.
There's two smoke monsters.
To clarify, the smoke monster is very much alive. He is simply assuming the form of Locke, as he assumed the form of Isabella.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
Sort of.
It makes enough sense.
Yeah, that's enough of an explanation.
Yeah.
It's all you could ever ask for at this point. Okay, so the smoke monster can assume the form of different people.
Yes.
John Locke is dead, right?
John Locke is dead, my friend.
So I guess that would say that the smoke monster can only assume the form of dead people?
I believe that is correct.
Okay.
I believe that is correct, and I think that, like, mostly checks out throughout the series.
I feel like in the very next episode, the smoke monster is just like, you own Jack now. And everyone's like, 2 Jacks.
Oh, I would love that. Oh, that would be blessed.
They're like, pair of jacks, and then the person beside them is like, pair of aces, and boom, Texas Hold'em.
Oh, would that it were so simple. Oh, man.
So, that sort of is, I guess, that's all the questions I had. There was some great moments I have written about.
For sure.
I absolutely loved when the priest refused to absolve Richard of his sins.
Yep, that was great.
It was a really bizarre turn of events.
He just looks like such a smug, like, wiener about it.
Yeah.
He's just like, no, I don't think I can absolve these sins.
It wasn't, like, sincere or shocking at all. It was just completely and unintentionally comical.
Yep. There's a lot of good unintentional comedy. When the smoke monster is first, like, tearing things up at the ship, there's a very good and delightful zoom in on Richard's eyes that just, like, feels, it's, like, artificially sped up. And also the camera is shaking, and also Richard is bug-eyed, and like...
there's these lights going off, too. There's, like, this lightning coming from the smoke monster.
Yeah, he does that. I don't think that's ever explained. Yeah. After, like, a chill night on an island with a charming little con man stealing the guns, we got a real... mythologically heavy episode.
I love that this episode completely reiterated what we had said earlier, which is that nothing that happened in the past episode had any bearing on the show whatsoever. The guns were so inconsequential.
I don't think there was a single gun in this episode.
No, there were no guns. There was one gun fired off screen in 1867 in this episode. When the smoke monster was first, like, appearing, or you heard the smoke monster coming, you heard some gunshots.
Right.
I assume it's not the same guns because this was 1867.
Of course. Hey, the year of Canada's Confederation. Nifty 150, baby.
Nifty 150. What else?
I don't know. I think we pretty much covered it. We've got almost 40 minutes. I'm ready to wrap up
I'm ready to wrap it up.
All right.
Think that was
cool.
Quite a romp.
That was a delightful journey, and it was a real, like, this is a very unique episode. Even for a season 6 episode, it's very, like, here's what I'll say. I'm glad that of all the season 6 episodes, we got this one because it's such a self-contained thing. It's like, as messy as all the, like, island mythos is, You have a clear, like, beginning, middle, and end. It's just this tale of Ricky's suffering. And it gets, like, it's a classic thing that, like, I mean, Lost is a show about people. Most of all. But it's all kind of.
It didn't feel like it in this episode. It felt very much like a show about God and the devil. But I can understand the.
I think that's what they're like going for. Is they're trying to be like, here's people, but also framed in this epic struggle that spans centuries. And then like as soon as you like focus on like that struggle, it just is like, come on, what's happening here?
Well, and we did say before, like, where they did really well was just with, like, personal relationships, like, the more soap opera-y aspects of the show.
And what is Richard's story but a soap opera? It's pretty much just,
absolutely a soap opera. There's a lot of death.
A lot of
suffering.
A lot of drama.
A lot of love. Just
the whole spectrum of emotions. And, give Nestor Carbonell some props. He definitely acts the hell out of this episode.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, he does his darndest.
So in terms of, like, where would you would rank this episode in goodness and compared to most Lost episodes?
Right. What's the ranking of this episode? It's a tough call because it's such a, like, standalone thing, and there's a couple episodes that break from the format like that. Like, where it'll be like, well, let's just focus on one thing instead of telling the islandy story. But, like, I think for an episode that does that breakaway thing, this is a pretty alright one. Despite its shortcomings, for sure. It's definitely a ride. But it also, just, I don't know. It just reminded me about so much of the season 6 shit that is only going to get more insane and convoluted as we dive deeper.
I would not hesitate to say that, having no idea of what the later seasons entailed, and like just what I was jumping into with this sort of thing, and having only seen the first 2.5-3 seasons, which I thought were very good. This was probably the worst episode of Lost that I've ever seen. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous, and it was not the reason that I liked the show.
That sounds about right. I think we can both agree that it was definitely worse than The Long Con, for sure.
Yeah, it was much worse than The Long Con. I really enjoyed The Long Con.
The Long Con was a delight, and listen, there's I don't think even a second of Sawyer in this episode.
There was no Sawyer. We got a half second of John Locke's silhouette.
Yeah.
We got a decent amount of Hurley.
We got some Hurley. We got some good Hurley action. But beyond that, I think it's time to close the book on AB AETERNO and hope that next week we roll something a little lower. God, when I saw the 3 digits, I was like, oh, shit. God.
Oh, my goodness.
Anyway, but you know what? It's only going to get worse.
That's the risk.
That's the risk we take.
With the Island Shuffle.
With this Island Shuffle of ours. Any plugs you want to toss out before we finally wrap this up? Before we finally hit this stop recording?
Not this week.
Not this week? Yeah, I don't really have anything going on this week either. I'm going to plug being kind to your friends and loving yourself.
Oh, I'm going to plug this show.
You're going to plug this? Do you mean Lost or do you mean the Island Shuffle?
The Island Shuffle.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this show right now, just go back and listen again.
Just keep listening. We only have 2 episodes so far, but just listen to them over and over again.
Yeah, that's like an hour and a half worth of stuff.
Yeah,
that's better than a movie.
That'll get you through a short commute, I'm sure. Thank you for listening. I've been Bean.
I've been James.
And everybody loves the show called Lost.